Yep. Okay, I'm going to release. Just give me a second.
Of course.
Yep. So thank you for joining us, Fernando, for the special time.
Thanks, Ariana.
We'd like to, as our participants are streaming in, it would be great if you could introduce yourself, Stratence, as well as a brief overview before we kick off the session proper.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ariana, and thanks to all the attendees. I assume that we are sharp on time. Some people will join in the next couple of minutes, but that's fine. We will go for the first slide that are about introduction. So the webinar is about, of course, how to adapt the system, the pricing system in times of crisis, right? So what we've prepared so far is a very short welcome in terms of explaining who is the Stratence partners, and at the end, why are we legitimate for delivering this webinar, right? And also to recall the purpose of the webinar, okay? So Stratence partners, well, more than 25 years of experience with more than 800 successful projects. The team is composed by more of 50 senior professional vice president partners. We cover the 360-degree best practice from people, governance, organization, processes, data, and systems, right? We apply 100% well-proven methodology from diagnostic, blueprint, piloting, and scaling and rolling out in the organization we work with. And we have global presence with offices in Europe, USA, Asia, LATAM, and Middle East, okay? As a particularity, in all Stratence Partners project, we commit with 100% transfer for future autonomy, 100% stakeholder full satisfaction, a one-to-one impact for quick wins return, so the projects are paying by themselves, and 1 to 10 return on investment for excellence roadmap. Okay, so profitable projects, right? As expert in strategy, optimization, pricing excellence, and commercial effectiveness, one good area where we are helping our customers also is about systems, data flow, tools, systems integration. And we thought that it was a good idea with Ariana to provide one webinar, pragmatic webinar on how to adapt quickly your systems to the situation that the worldwide, most of the industries are going through, right? So the purpose of the webinar is to provide a pragmatic review, covering strategy optimization, pricing excellence, and commercial effectiveness, and reviewing how data flow and system could be efficiently improved with short-term solutions, right? And I hope that at the end of the webinar, we will have met your expectations with this objective of pragmatic, covering strategy, pricing, commercial, and reviewing data flow and system for short-term improvements. It's okay? Good. We have 1 hour of webinar. I'm going to be quick in some of the chapters, right? Because I assume that for some of you, a lot of things will be new. For some of you, you are already quite advanced. So I will do a sort of average, and I hope that we will have 10, 15 minutes at the end of the webinar for Q&A, right? So please take note of all the questions that you might have, and we'll have a pleasure, Ariane and myself, to provide as much as we can the right answer to your questions and expectations at the end of the webinar. It's okay? So let's go for it. First thing, of course, as in a such complex landscape as systems for pricing, strategy, and commercial, although it's provide a short introduction to make sure that we are on the same page, right? The first thing that we want to communicate is that pricing systems needs to be part of a larger vision, right? It's not only about pricing, but it's also about strategy, and it's also about commercial. And why? Well, at the end, Pricing is nothing else and nothing more than to translate into the right conditions in the market the strategy of the organization. So if your strategy is not perfect, if your strategy is not well known, if your strategy is not structured, it will be difficult to have a good pricing implemented in the field, right? So at the end, what is your strategy in this market, this product for this kind of customer? Is about volume growth, or is about loyalty, is about market share, is about extension of the portfolio, is about profit? What is your strategy, right? Avoiding churn, expanding for new customers, launching new product. So your strategy will define at the end what kind of pricing policy, what kind of pricing initiative you will build in the field. And then, of course, pricing is a theory exercise, right? You need to go down, you need to go down to sales, you need to take your pricing and move it to the real world. You need to change the way that salespeople are negotiating, the training that they have, the material, the tools, the information, the skills, sometimes the organization, and so on, right? So you need to make it real by going down the sales, the execution, the commercial, the go-to-market, whatever will be the right name in your organization. That's why we say that at the end, pricing is not just pricing, it's part of a larger vision with strategy and with commercial. Okay? Point one. Point two, pricing systems are part of a broader ecosystem, right? It's not only about system. A software alone won't solve your pricing. You need to consider people, and people. People are key in all projects, in all organizations. With the best system, if people are not well trained, they are not convinced, they don't want to use the system won't work, right? So people. Body is about organization and governance, right? Fundamental piece for having a best practice in place. Processes, of course, data, systems. And as you can see, we make the difference between systems and data. We don't mix these two streams, right? So at the end, with very good data, you can already do something. With very good systems, if you don't get the right data, useless, right? So data is one stream, system is a different one. And in all of that, the most important asset for pricing for an organization is about mindset, the mindset of the organization, right? So you can have the best pricing initiative in your PowerPoint, in your Excel. If people that are not aligned cross-functionally, if they are not embracing your initiative in terms of improving pricing, it will be difficult. So mindset of the organization is the key enabler to make sure that your pricing will work properly, right? So that's why pricing system is good, but it's not enough, right? There is other dimensions to be considered. And as a third and last point, pricing system must institutionalize best practices. I'm going to be quite simple in the explanation of that. If you have a wrong segmentation, right? Your segmentation is really wrong, and you don't improve your segmentation before to put your segmentation in your new system, what are you going to have? The wrong segmentation into the right system. At the end, wrong result, right? So a lot of time, well, I'm not going to exaggerate, but not a few times, we saw how organizations are requesting to the system to institutionalize wrong practices, right? They don't do the right pricing policy, they don't have the right analytics, they don't have the right dashboard, the right KPI, the right segmentation, the right. They are not doing right on the best practice, and they want a system to institutionalize the wrong way they are doing, right? So that's important also, right? So systems will do whatever you will tell them to do, wrong or right. So it's better first to make sure that you will have the right practices in place, and then institutionalize, automate, make more efficient by applying the right system. Okay, so pricing as a larger vision. Pricing, yes, but it's not enough, right? It's part of a broader ecosystem. And also think about a system as a second step after making sure that you have the best practices in place. Having said that, as a short introduction, let's go for the content of the webinar. So a bit complex, but let's go step by step. The first thing that we need to make sure that we understand is about the different levels of maturity in an organization, right? So that's why in Stratence Partner, we use these world-class pricing benchmark models. It's a very smart way to help the organization to understand where they are today in terms of maturity and where they have the opportunity to be tomorrow, right? From level 1, reactive ad hoc, right? So firefighting mode. Yes, there is processes, but most of them are broken. Yes, there is tools, but they are not connecting. Yes, there is data, but they are everywhere, and so on, right? So we are trying hard. We spend a lot of resources, effort, energy trying to do pricing, but at the end, there is no processes in place. There is no the proper governance. The data flow is not automated. Is not high quality. Systems are not integrated, and all these kind of things, right? So when we understand that there is a better opportunity, we move to what we call smart cost plus. And smart cost plus is not a bad place to be, right? It's already a smart place to be. Smart cost plus, well, we understand our cost, we understand our profit, we understand already how much profit we can do with this product in this customer, depending on the segmentation and on already good sense of the willingness to pay. So we have processes, we have governance, we have data, we have tools. We are already doing quite good, but on a cost plus perspective. So it's smart, but cost plus. Some point of time, we decide to improve and we move to competitive premium. Why? Because at the end, in Smart Cost Plus, well, I do 10% or 12% or 15% cost plus. But at the end, I'm cheap or I'm expensive depending on my competition. So I need to understand a bit more what my competition is doing. That's why I move to competitive premium and I start to develop a competitive intelligence. Level 3, competitive intelligence. Then, of course, level 2, smart cost plus. It's an internal exercise. Level 3, competitive. I'm starting to look at the market, my competition. Somebody is missing in the equation is the customer. So that's why we move to value-based solutions. That's where everybody wants to be. But I have to say that if you don't go on a sequential mode, if you don't go through level 2, through level 3, and we try to implement already level 4, it doesn't work. Because if you don't know your price, if you don't know your competition, you can't do value. So that's why it's sequential. Okay, so we have this model in terms of maturity. It's important because sometimes there is organizations that are thinking about a system and say, well, at which level of maturity do you want your system? Do you want a system for level 1, reactive ad hoc? So what you are doing perhaps right now. Do you want a system for level 2, for level 3, for level 4? Or do you want a system that will start by level 2 and will be able to evolve to level 4? And that's important because we saw some organizations that they start with a good system at level 2 and then they realized that the system was not supporting level 3, not supporting level 4. Okay? So that's the level of maturity. Then to understand a system, it's a very complex environment. We use in Stratence Partner these 6 key components of a pricing system. So what do you need for your pricing system? First, you need data, integrated pricing data flow. The first thing that you should do with your data is to have the right segmentation, right? So dynamic pricing segmentation. When you have the data and you have the segmentation, next step is about developing analytics. You need to develop intelligence. You need to understand your consistency, your efficiency, your elasticity in the market at a transactional level, or your value positioning if you are already at level 4, or your premium if you are at level 3. So again, you need to develop intelligence by data and analytics. When you have the data and the analytics and you have developed the intelligence, you need to transform this intelligence in terms of rules, in terms of pricing policy, right? So that's why we move to pricing waterfall toolbox. And it is represented by our friend, the waterfall, from list price, reference price, and down to discounts and rebates and cost to serve and cost to sell, the COGS, and so on, right? So at the end, pocket profit. I need to have this visibility, this transparency in terms of what kind of conditions I'm providing to the market and what are the return of these conditions in the market. When I have this pricing waterfall toolbox, all this intelligence, I need to provide this intelligence to sales. That's what we call the commercial user interface. Whatever will be your sales interface, it could be tender oriented or more transactional, right? A contract for one order or for 1 year, for one season, or even so an e-com platform. Whatever will be your output, at the end, you need to provide your intelligence to your sales output. And then you need to, of course, monitor your performance, right? At the end, all this platform is a learning platform. You assume that your market will go on this way because of the volume, the profit, the market share, the share of wallet, and so on. And then you need to measure if your assumptions were right, and you need to fine tune your assumptions, sometimes in a daily basis, sometimes in a real-time basis. It depends on your industry, your business. It depends also if you are going through distribution and you need to manage the sell-in and the sell-out, or in pharma through hospitals or payers, whatever it would be, right? So, of course, this platform needs to be adapted to your specificity in terms of industry, countries, and sometimes also the culture of your organization. As a last point in all these items that you need to consider in a systems, after the 5 levels of maturity and the 6 modules of a pricing system, it's about, of course, you need to consider the full pricing process. So systems is about supporting the strategy optimization, the pricing excellence, the commercial effectiveness, and the performance management. If you consider a pricing system for only one of these buckets, well, you will miss something, right? Because at the end, it's about automation and making sure that, for instance, your data flow is integrated along this entire process to make sure that you will talk about the same data, you will measure the same thing, you will use the same KPI. At the end, you will have the same language with the rest of the organization when you will have to take some decisions, or you will have to monitor the result of these decisions. Okay, so that are the 3 elements: the maturity, the modules, and the process. And it makes it a bit complex. That's true, right? But at the end, well, when something is very complex, what you need to develop is the capacity to make it simple, right? So, and we are talking about agile approach, minimum viable product. Let's go for a first version, a second version, a third version. Let's release something that will make sense every 3, 4, 5 months, and not to move to a project of a 3 years project without any touchable result in the short term. Okay, let's go for now reviewing what does it mean for each one of these components of the pricing system, because we are more oriented to the pricing systems today and how to make it pragmatic improvement in the short term. Let's go for the integrated pricing data flow. The integrated pricing data flow is something that can be very large, very complex. In all organizations, there is a lot of data. Data are everywhere, different quality, different frequencies, and so on, right? So here you have most of the data that you can find in an organization, right? The basic transactional data flow, so from transactional segmentation, customer, the international reference price or unique reference price, we are talking about the volume, the profit, the market share, the speed, the loyalty, well, net price, or the COGS, or the gross profit. So all the basic transactional data flow. They are usually the ones that are easiest to get, right? Then if you move to, of course, the level 4, in terms of value, we have the advanced value data flow, the value segmentation, customer value intelligence, the competitive intelligence, the discount and rebates to drive value, right? And we have data flow hierarchy, like the hierarchy of the transaction. What kind of transaction it is? Is it a credit transaction? Is a revolving transaction? Is a direct transaction? Is a credit, or whatever it would be, right? So of course the customer, and even so the channel hierarchy of the customer, product and services hierarchy, right, by type, by group, subgroup, the organization hierarchy, all this kind of information that will be necessary to understand a bit better your strategy, your pricing rules, and then monitor the result. And of course, at the optimization level, you can go for the excellence level in terms of having data for design to price, or having industry power with the 5 Cs, famous 5C industry power, like factors, industry capacity, cost evolution, and so on, or also to embed value research into your data flow, right? Sort of menu choice based, conjoint, and so on. When it's really well done, it's really powerful also. And there is supporting processes that are around pricing that the data flow should be integrating also. We have DOA, delegation of authority, exception management. It's part of the pricing process, right? Incentives, it is recommended to link the incentives to the pricing performance. Perhaps not as a first objective, but you need to have that at least in your roadmap for the next 6 months or 6 years. But at the end, linking incentive to the pricing performance, it's a very nice initiative, recommended. And feed force also data collection. So when your salespeople are integrating data, the price of the competition, the value of the competition, the services that they are offering, the discount, the rebate, so how to collect from your salespeople a lot of market information. So we're not going through all the details. Of course, when we start in an organization, what do we have is that, well, the organization is using some of this data, and the organization needs to plan for the next month or years how to get better and more data in the future, right? So that's the integrated pricing data flow. Usually, what do we have? Well, we have a lot of different systems where the data are lying, right? So it's difficult at the end to get this data, and we need to have a sort of ETL, right? So I'm going to look at, yes, an ETL that will connect this data, will collect this data, and will make sure that we will have this data in one single point of truth, right? So that's the important part of that. So at the end, most of the organization, they have some of this data already available somewhere, and there is some tools that are called ETL. I can share some examples at the end, or on a one-to-one individual basis. And we are doing that in some of our customers in terms of implementing ETLs, extract, transform, load, that are tools that are collecting on an automated way the data where they are. They are, of course, transforming this data, so extracting, transforming, and then they are loading this data in one database, in one repository, right? So starting from what do you have and moving to a step-by-step approach on, in the future, the data that you could have, and using this data as a first step for developing your system. It is very important in terms of starting to think about data, right? So we saw a few times organizations that they were starting to implement a pricing system, and suddenly realizing that the data were missing, or the data were not automated, or the data were not with the right quality, or the data were not interconnected, right? So you have data that are on one system, data that are on another system, and there is no way to bring together this data because the key to connect this data is missing, right? A lot of issues in the data usually as replicated systems, or replicated customers, the same customer with different code, or the same product with different codes, and so on. So there is a lot to do in the data before to move to a system. When we've got the data and the data are automated, we have the opportunity to go for dynamic pricing segmentation. So it's a better place to be, for sure. And what do we want with that is to make sure and to explain properly what is a good segmentation, right? We are using that. So at the end, a good segmentation needs to reflect the behaviors of our customer. If we move the price and our customers are going to move the volume, so they will react, the good segmentation will tell us by segments that it is working, right? So we can detect what are the behaviors of our customers by having a good pricing segmentation. So it's not a marketing segmentation. It's not a go-to-market segmentation. It's really a pricing behaviors segmentation. And we have to say that we do this segmentation by analyzing the data that we have. So the customer, they have demonstrated from the past, how do they react? Each time that I've increased price, some customer, they reacted on one way, some customer, they reacted on a different way. So we have the proof in our past data. It's not perfect, it's not 100% exact, right? Accurate, but at the end, it's better to be 80% accurate rather than 100% blind, right? So we have already a good approach in terms of understanding how our customers are reacting. And if we do that on a dynamic way, right, it's not that we do that for the next 3 years, is that on a daily basis, we are analyzing how our customers are reacting, right? So we are able to detect not only the segment of a customer versus a product or a service, but also on a daily basis, if this customer is moving from segment A to segment B, right? So that's why we have this approach in terms of, well, a best practice segmentation. We have small customer, big customer, bad customer, good customer, and we have big and good customer. Yes, we do. We have small and bad customer. Yes, we do. Depending on your strategy, what is a small and bad and big and good will be different. It can be because of the volume, because of the profit, because of the share of wallet, because of the loyalty, the frequency, etc. Right? So we can segment our customer by volume, by profit, by share of wallet, by loyalty, by frequency, by value size, and then we can cluster them in behavioral segment. The customers are already telling us that they want to work with us. They are loyal. They love our high value products, services, and so on, right? So we just need to listen to the market through the data. And we move to behavioral clustering. And of course, there is some tools, like here we have a air module. Some of you are a bit more familiarized with this technology. So there is technologies that are doing the daily segmentation for you. You don't need to work on that. You just need to define the criteria at the beginning, and on a daily basis, the tool will do the segmentation for you. The tool will recognize the behaviors of the customer and will move the customer from one segment to another segment depending on the behaviors. Okay, so we've got the data, we've got the segmentation. Now we move to analytics. We need the data, we need the segmentation, we are able to move to analytics. What kind of analytics? Well, there is a lot of analytics, from transactional analytics to premium analytics to value-based analytics, right? So at the end, all of them, they have the same concept. We have a database where we have clean and fresh data. We connect this database to tools, analytical tools, whatever will be these tools, analytical at a transactional level, at a premium level, competitive premium, or at a value level. And we run analytics that are, most of them should be at least business case oriented, because we run analytics to detect rooms for improvement. That's a good example that we have in the screen. Well, we have, customers that they have a lot of discount, customers that they have very low discount, customers that have high volume, very low volume. So the red dots are the ones that have high discount with low volume. And it's just an example, right? You will see that there is more than 32 types of analytics. So it can be good, or perhaps it's not, right? So that's not only about doing analytics on a mathematics standpoint, but also to understand what does it mean in terms of business. But if there is no good reason to have customer with high discount and low volume, well, it should be or it could be an opportunity. So we develop a rule to avoid this. So it is not only about cleaning the past, but making sure that we will not repeat this situation in the future. When we will negotiate with a new customer, we will avoid to have a new customer with high discount and low volume. When we will renegotiate with a existing customer, we will try to move him to a better place in these corridors. So at the end, to have this new customer or this existing customer in the corridor that we will consider fair corridor. The equation between price and volume is the right one, right? So, and that's why we are able to develop corridors of consistency, corridors of fairness, corridors of efficiency, right? And it's important in terms of that what we are developing, it's not one price is an equation. We are developing equations in terms, and the equation is always relative to, for instance, the days of payment or the volume or the length of the portfolio or the profit or. So it's something that it will help at the end the salespeople to negotiate. If you give me something, I will give you something in exchange, right? So that's why we don't measure a price, we measure a equation that will define the price, but also, as you understood the approach, it's not about a price, it's about a condition, a lever. I'm going to give you one discount because of volume, one discount because of days of payment, one discount because of loyalty, one rebate because of the extension of the portfolio. And each one of these conditions, I will measure each one of these conditions to make sure that they are fair with each one of the product in each one of my customers. Of course, also, there is a lot of analytics to be done. And even so, considering that it is not only about one analytics like consistency, but we have the opportunity to do 32 best practice analytics. With 4 of them, we are already very good, right? So about consistency, so are we consistent in the market? If I provide this result for this kind of levers, for this kind of discount, rebates, or marketing support, or days of payment, or whatever it would be, right? The premium also, how is the premium of my price versus competitor price? Efficiency, if I give more discount to a customer, is it providing me in return more volume or more loyalty or whatever it would be? But at the end, if I decrease or increase conditions in a customer, I should expect a reaction. If I don't get any reaction when I decrease my conditions, is because this condition is not efficient for this customer, and I should remove the money from this condition to another condition that will be a bit more efficient, right? Of course, elasticity, our good friend, right? Well, if I decrease the price, how it will affect the volume. So we can do this for analytics, and we can do this for analytics across, hundreds of segments. So it means that we should be doing thousands of analytics on a daily basis. Don't be afraid. That's why the human has invented the computer. It's a computer that should be doing this analytics, right? So when we have all this analytics done on a daily basis, and we are able to define what are the best conditions for each one of my products, each one of my service, in each one of my customer, I need to transform that in rules, right? So that's why we move to the waterfall in terms of pricing waterfall toolbox. The pricing waterfall toolbox is nothing else and nothing more that at the end, I'm coming from my dynamics equations and I put some conditions, of course, because I did these equations through some conditions, right? By regions, by business unit, by country, by customer type, by segment, by product, and so on. So at the end, what do I need is rules, right? So if the customer is in this segment, if the product is in this segment, if the customer is also buying another kind of services, if, that should be the best corridor of price, corridor of conditions to negotiate with this customer. I know that from my equations. My equations are telling me that this customer is happy with these conditions. So when I will negotiate with this customer, if I have the right rules to put the customer and the negotiation and this contract or this order in the right landscape, I will have all the intelligence at my disposition, and I will be able to say, well, I know what I need to negotiate to have this customer happy with the outcome of the negotiation. And it's not only about price, profit, volumes, and value, right? At the end, it's also that in the same landscape, I need to have rules for exceptions. I need to have rules for incentives. At the end, exceptions are rules also, right? If the volume is high, if the profit is high, if the customer is strategic, if, you can do the exception, or you need to be authorized by your boss or the boss of your boss or the CEO of the company. So at the end, it's about rules, right? In terms of incentives, it's also about rules. If you do this volume, if you do this profit, if you provide more customers, or if you don't lose customer, if you introduce this new product, if, you've got incentives, right? And contractual clauses is also rules, right? If the customer is from this type, and if is buying this service, and if, that's the kind of clauses, that's the kind of contract that we can offer to the customer. So it's all about rules, and it's getting complex, but we are not afraid about complexity. That's why we want systems. So if we know what we have to do, if we know what are the rules that we need to put in place, there is for that a very nice tool that we call a rules engine, right? So you can define these rules. Let's say that in a very simple rules approach, you can imagine how to do that with Excel, right? So if with Excel, it's not so complex, right? But when it's getting complex, because you have a lot of segments of customer, a lot of segments of products, a lot of salespeople, a lot, Excel is not anymore the right platform. You need to evolve a bit, and that's why there is rules engine. One of them is Oracle policy modeling. It's a very nice and friendly tool. We use that in most of our customers, but it's not the only one, to make it clear, right? So OPM, Oracle policy modeling, is providing a very friendly interface in terms of defining your rules. If the customer, if the product, if the service, if the competitor, if whatever you want to put in, because you will have developed this intelligence, right? So you are able at the end to develop scenarios with a lot of entry parameters. Even so, the weather, right? If the day is sunny, or if the day is rainy, right? So what should be your conditions, or whatever you would be, right? So at the end, it can support everything, right? So we have the data, we have the segments, and segments are fundamental because, for instance, this rule will be different for each one of the segment of customer service and products. We have the analytics, so we have the intelligence on how to develop this rule, what will be the result of this rule, and we have automated the intelligence. We have the rules engine that is telling us what should be the price, the discount, the rebates, the conditions, if we need to offer, the freights for free, or the FOB, or whatever it would be. Everything is already defined by the intelligence that we have in the platform. So we move, of course, to the next one, is about providing the commercial user interface. We need to move this intelligence to the salespeople. It's not only about providing a tool, right? They need to be trained, they need to be coached, they need to feel comfortable, they need to understand why the system will suddenly tell them, well, you should be offering this product and this service with this volume, with this discount, with this rebate, with this net price, with these contractual clauses, with this guarantee. Everything will be already proposed for the negotiation by the system, and they need to feel comfortable with what the system is proposing. They need to understand from where this intelligence is coming, and they need to trust it. So that's why we say sales engagement, change mindset, coaching, and training program. It's very important. And there is different type of tools also. We'll see some of them, but there is, sales guide that are more transactional, or deal cockpit that are more value tenders oriented. Of course, there is a concept of peer pricing, right? So at the end, the scenario that a salespeople is receiving is also telling to the salespeople, hey, you peers, the other salespeople are able to do this scenario. So perhaps you could do better. Perhaps it will be more difficult for you to negotiate this scenario, but you have already a good objective, right? You know that your colleagues, your peers are able to negotiate in the same condition with the same customer, with the same product, and so on. They are able to negotiate this scenario. And that's peer pricing. It's really important, really powerful. Of course, you have the opportunity to link that to the incentives. Hey, if you are able to negotiate this scenario, or if you are able to improve this scenario, your incentives also will be improved. And there is the management of exception. Sometimes it's not possible to negotiate what the system is saying for whatever reason, right? So every time that you put a rule in place, you should be also planning for the exception, right? And exception management, delegation of authority is important. So in the same platform, in the same commercial user interface, you should be also managing exceptions. The commercial user interface can help also on the sales speech, right? What to say to this customer? Well, this customer is price oriented. Okay, so explain to the customer how you are going to provide the best price. Or this customer is value oriented. Well, explain to the customer how you are going to provide the best value to the customer. Very simple examples, right? But at the end, yes, we have different products, different services with different value. We have different customers. Some of them, they just want price. Some of them, they are more willing to pay for value. So we could help better the salespeople also to adapt their speech, right? One speech for the average market and the average product is not the best approach. A modular speech, a speech that will be dynamic and adapted to each one of the circumstances of the negotiation will be much more powerful. And of course, we will have the opportunity, as we said already, in terms of market data. We'll have the opportunity to collect from the market the information about the best guess of the competitor price, the share of wallet in a customer, the services that the competition is providing, and so on, right? So it is exact, it is accurate, no. But it is better than nothing, yes. And if I have 500 salespeople in the road, and these 500 salespeople, they are providing me every day with data points, I will do a good job in terms of cleaning them, and using them in the right way. So at the end, we went through all the, that's just two examples of a more transactional sales guide where we are talking about portfolio, about volume, corridors of negotiation, the conditions that we can negotiate. There is a gauge that you can see also that depending on the scenario that I'm negotiating, my incentives will move also. If I'm negotiating a very good scenario with my customer, if the negotiation is going very well, I will have very good incentives. If not, well, the opposite, right? So that's our more transactional. And then in the right, you have an example of deal management, tender tool, right? A tool that is not helping on the transactional way, but is helping on the tendering, on when we have this kind of bid approach, right? So understanding where we are positioned in terms of price, in terms of value, and where our competition is positioned, and what will be the likelihood to win, right? So at the end, the win-loss analysis of my tender, right? So, and the two are very different, but are coming from the same platform. So we have some customers that they have transactional and they have tendering. Good news, the same platform, the same intelligence is able to manage both. Good news also, I'm not disrupting the market because I'm having two different strategy, one for transactional and one for tenders. Or at least if I have different strategy, it's a decision, right? So that's important in terms of understanding that different, let's say, types of sales, but coming from the same strategy, the same pricing policy, the same intelligence, and moving also to the same monitoring of the performance, right? And that's why we have at the end, in terms of pricing KPI monitoring, well, monitoring the performance is easy, right? If you've done your homework in the first step, if you have the right data, the right segmentation, if you have the right analytics, if you have the right rules engine, the right waterfall, and you provide the right intelligence to your salespeople, you just need to move your data moving to information and from information to intelligence, right? So that's different. Sometimes you are doing monitoring with just data, it's difficult, or with just information, it's difficult. If you are able to cross, for instance, your as-is win-loss with your to-be win-loss, right? So at the end, how you are going to improve over time your win-loss rate, that's providing intelligence, right? The information of just that you have lost or you have won is just an information. You can't do too much with that, right? So the ability to move from data through information and to provide intelligence to your monitoring performance is the key aspect of a good monitoring performance. And for that also, there is some KPIs like, the mix of the performance. So what is your pricing mix, your volume mix, your customer mix, your product mix, your profit mix, the consistency tracker. Are you consistent across your segment, your market, your go-to-market, your product and customers? Are you efficient in each one of the conditions that you are providing? So the efficiency measurement. And also, what is your level of excellence? That's also a measurement. In terms of platform, I would say that our recommendation is, in most of the organizations we are working with, is to use what you already have. Most of the organizations, they have already a business intelligence, whatever it would be, right? ClickView, Tableau, MicroStrategy, HANA from SAP, whatever it would be, right? So at the end, it's all about having data and a nice way to look at this data, right? So we don't recommend to have two screens for your CEO, but in the same screen, to develop new KPIs and new dashboards that will talk a bit better about your pricing performance, right? And if you did your homework through the different modules and you've got the data, you've got the segmentation, you've got the analytics, you've got your waterfall, and you are providing this intelligence to salespeople, it's quite easy to think about, well, I have a plan and I have a rail, right? The plan is what should happen in terms of volume, profit, churn of my customers, market share, share of wallet. I have that in my scenario. And then the real world is different. Sometimes I'm green, right? So the theory is matching the real world. Sometimes it's not. So I have red buckets. I need to concentrate on these red buckets to understand what happens. Sometimes I need to improve my data or my segmentation. I need to train better my salespeople. I need to rethink my strategy or to improve my pricing conditions. But at the end, that's about monitoring the performance, okay? So we've went through the 6 modules of the pricing system, and we went through the data flow, the segmentation, the waterfall toolbox, the analytics, the user interface, and the monitoring. And we saw some, well, good short-term possible actions to be taken in terms of improving each one of these modules separately, right? And if you have a good plan to improve separately and to focus on the one that is more crucial for you, you have a pragmatic approach for sure, right? So now I think that just in time, 10 minutes for the end of the workshop, I will give back the ball to Ariana to manage the Q&A session. So thanks for your patience. I know that in some of the content of this presentation, it has been a bit fast, but for sure adapted to the average people. Some of you are already quite advanced in these modules, in these capabilities. Some of you perhaps not. So we tried to do an average, and I hope that through the Q&A, we will help the two kinds of profiles, the ones that are already advanced and the ones that are not. But please don't hesitate, don't be shy. and ask the questions that you might have. Ariana, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful presentations. It's very, very enriching and very eye-opening even for me. Yes, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you for also taking time. And I'm pleased to announce that the question floor is now open. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute everybody. So you're now all allowed to talk. Or if you're a little on the shy side, just drop your questions on the chat box that I have already sent out the first conversation to kick the ball going. Or maybe just to get everyone warmed up. So Fernando, if I may ask a question, just to, so right now, what there has been some scenarios. How should we adjust them, and should pricing be stable within this crisis period, or should they try to adjust as soon as possible?
Well, at least it should be a decision, right? So at the end, you have the opportunity to adjust, and you should have the intelligence to understand what does it mean, right? So let's make it simple in terms of explaining. The first reaction, of course, would be my volume is decreasing, right? Because the situation is tough, so I should decrease my price, right? So, well, what would be the scenario in terms of decreasing your price? How much you should be decreasing to get a good answer in terms of volume? If the market at this time is zero, right? So for instance, in some countries for the hotel industry, there is no customers. So whatever you will do in terms of decreasing your price, no way to get a response in volumes. And even so, it is not because you are going to decrease your price that you will get a good answer in volume. And also, you should be decreasing a lot your prices to get a very small answer in volume. So these assumptions, it's not because Fernando is saying that. When you have this kind of platform, you are measuring that. The platform is telling you with data what are the different scenarios that you should be considering in your market and what are the consequences of each one of your scenarios. So there is not really a good and a bad scenario. There is scenarios that are taken with intelligence, and there is scenarios that are adopted with gut feeling. I let you to decide at the end which one is more risky, right? If you take decisions with intelligence, or if you take decisions with a more, a data driven intelligence. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have room for a couple more questions. Come on, don't be shy. Or Fernando, we'd like to take the lead to ask them a question so that we can be sure they have had some practical takeaways.
Yes, of course. So in terms of practical takeaway, I think that I will come back to this first slide where we've used that as a sort of navigator, right? So takeaway will be three different takeaways. The first one is you need to think about your pricing system as a maturity approach also, right? So you should think about your pricing system on how your pricing system will help you to move from level 1 reactive ad hoc to level 2 and being better as Smart Cost Plus, and then incorporating competitive intelligence, and then incorporating value-based solution. So it's important in the two ways. First, because you are already focusing on what do you need today. And second, because you are not forgetting about where you want to be tomorrow, right? You will avoid to go for some solutions that will be very short when you will be thinking about the next step, right? In terms of embedding competitive intelligence and embedding value intelligence also, right? So that's the first point in terms of thinking about your evolution in terms of maturity. And thinking also that sometimes you can evolve differently by business unit or by family of product or by countries, right? It's not about all your organization needs to move, right? You will have perhaps the opportunity to move very quickly in one type of product in this country or this business unit, right? So it's not that all your organization at the same time needs to move from level 1, level 2. So that's the first tip. The second one is you should be thinking about a system by making it simple. And the way to make it simple is not to think about a system, but to think about 6 modules, right? And they are quite sequential. The first thing that you should be thinking about is about how to automate a good data flow, right? Because with a good data flow, most of the people that are in the call today, right, I'm sure that they will be able with a pivot table to start to do things, right? So you don't need to have big tools and big analytics and so on. With the right data, you start to do some nice plotters and nice waterfall and nice, you are able to start delivering to the organization with the right data flow. Then with the data flow, you can move to, well, I'm starting to understand how my customers are behaving. I'm able to detect in this data that some of my customers, they love this kind of product. Some of my customers, they don't like when I increase price, whatever it would be, right? So it's about moving to segmentation. Then,
Okay.
well, sorry?
Yeah, no, it's just that the few questions coming in. I'm going to quickly sum them up. Yeah, now people are warming up. Yeah, so there's a 6 key components if they can be equally useful in also the crisis right now when they are already useful in normal environment. And the other question that just came in is nowadays multinational companies are bigger and bigger, and some of them are considering to harmonize their prices worldwide, which we once talked about during the gray zone presentation before. And that, which kind of value drivers they have to use, like volumes, markets?
Okay, so there is 2 questions on that. The first thing that, well, if these 6 modules are still valuable in times of crisis, well, it's always the same, right? So the organization, they should be leveraging good times to put this kind of capabilities in place, but suddenly they recall about these capabilities in the bad times when there is, to say it very clearly, there is no budget, there is no energy, and there is other priorities, right? So it's a chicken and egg. The organization that they have this kind of capabilities in place, they will go much more better through the crisis, right? That's clear. Now, is it the right time in a crisis to put in place these capabilities? I would say not the full package, not the final version, but at least that's why to put in place a pragmatic and short-term version of these modules is our recommendation, to start to have something, because to have something is better than rather than to have nothing, right? So in times of crisis, let's go to have something in the short term to leverage. That's the first question. The second question was about, Rihanna, can you recall a bit the second question was about? Yes.
It's something like gray zone. Gray zone.
The gray zone, international. Yep. Well, at the end, an organization also is a sort of puzzle. So if you think about this capability, these modules across your different business unit and your different countries and portfolio and so on, right? At the end, well, if it's the same platform, you will avoid this gray area. Our customers are using this platform also for, these European corridors or for these gray markets between Canada and the US or between some European countries, because at the end, it will provide one, transparency, second, control. And at the end, you will be able to manage this at a global level, but also at a local level. It is not one or the other. These capabilities are welcome at the different level, from global to regions and to countries, even so at a product manager level, right, in the country, when there is a different family of portfolio, let's say.
Okay, thank you so much for Fernando. I hate to interrupt because everyone's starting a warm up now, and I'm very apologetic for having to cut short this getting cozy and intimate conversation that we're having. And Fernando has so much to share since he's very knowledgeable in this field. What I can do is we're gonna have one session, another similar session in June, and do feel free to continue to write to us, Keynotion, your questions, and I believe Fernando and I would be more than happy to compile your questions, and we can also address them in our June session. What do you think, Fernando?
It will be good. I'm fully available and fully open. I love pricing. As you can see, I'm a passionate, so I will be very happy to keep this conversation with the participants that have good questions and good discussions, right? So
all right.
More than available.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's give Fernando thanks. I was almost to say a round of applause, but to give him our thanks and for taking everyone's time to join us today. It has been a wonderful pleasure to have Fernando with us, and we really do look forward to another exciting session in June, and more will come. And we have taken note all your questions, and do feel free to continue to send us your questions, and we will be more than happy to address them in June. We look forward to seeing you next month.
Okay, thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.